Most boats eventually get replaced. Owners move to something newer, bigger, faster, or more modern. A boat that once felt perfect suddenly starts feeling too small, too slow, or simply outdated, and before long, it's listed for sale and replaced by the next upgrade. But not every boat follows that pattern. Some boats seem to create a different kind of owner, the kind of owner who keeps the boat for 10, 15, or even 20 years. In some cases, people sell them, only to spend years looking for another one. Others regret the sale almost immediately, and that raises an interesting question. What makes a boat so good that people simply refuse to let it go? Because it isn't always about size, it isn't always about luxury, and it definitely isn't always about having the latest technology. In fact, some of the boats with the most loyal owners are surprisingly simple. Before we get into specific models, I'm curious, have you ever owned something that you wish you had never sold? Maybe it was a car, maybe a motorcycle, maybe even a boat. Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy practical boats that people actually use and keep for years, subscribe to the channel. Because today we're looking at boats that have earned something far more valuable than impressive specifications. They've earned loyalty. The interesting thing is that most of these boats aren't perfect. Some are slow, some are old, some lack the modern features buyers often chase, yet their owners keep coming back to them. The reason is simple. Over time, priorities change. When people first start boating, they often focus on things like speed, appearance, and features. But after years on the water, many begin to value something completely different. Reliability, comfort, predictability. A boat that starts every time. A boat that doesn't constantly demand attention. A boat that feels comfortable, whether you're spending a weekend on board or a month. That's when people stop asking, what's the newest boat? And start asking, what boat makes life easier? The boats we're looking at today fall into that category. They may not be the most exciting boats at a boat show. They may not attract the biggest crowds at a marina. But they quietly do something that many other boats fail to do. They make owners want to keep them. And the first boat on our list is a perfect example of exactly that. The first boat on our list is the Mainship 34. At first glance, it doesn't look like the kind of boat people would keep for decades. It isn't particularly flashy, it isn't exceptionally large, and it certainly doesn't have the prestige of some high-end trawlers, but that's exactly why so many owners end up loving it. The Mainship 34 was built around practicality. It's large enough to spend extended time on board comfortably, yet small enough to manage without feeling overwhelmed. For many owners, it hits a sweet spot that larger boats often miss. Operating costs are relatively reasonable. Maintenance is straightforward compared to more complex yachts, and the layout makes everyday life surprisingly comfortable. What really keeps people attached to boats like this is something simple. They're easy to own. That might not sound exciting, but after years of boating, many owners discover that ease of ownership matters far more than impressive specifications. A boat that is simple to maintain and affordable to operate often gets used more. And the more a boat gets used, the harder it becomes to replace. Many owners start looking at larger boats only to realize something unexpected. They're not actually solving a problem, they're just spending more money. And that's often why the Mainship stays. Next is a boat that couldn't be more different, the Roughwater 37. Unlike the Mainship, the Roughwater immediately feels substantial. The moment you see one, there's a sense that it was built for serious work rather than showing off at a marina. Part of the reason owners become attached to these boats is their reputation for durability. These boats were built during a period when many manufacturers focused heavily on strength and long-term reliability. The result is a vessel that often feels solid even decades after it left the factory. But durability alone doesn't explain the loyalty. The real attraction is confidence. Owners often describe boats like the Roughwater as reassuring. They feel secure in changing weather. They feel capable when conditions become less than ideal, and over time, that feeling becomes difficult to replace. Because boating isn't always about comfort, Sometimes it's about peace of mind. Knowing that your boat is capable of handling more than you ask of it creates a level of trust that many newer boats struggle to achieve. And once an owner develops that trust, selling the boat becomes much harder than expected. That's a theme you'll notice throughout this list. The boats people keep the longest aren't necessarily the most exciting. They're the ones that quietly earn trust year after year. And our next boat might be one of the best examples of that philosophy. The next boat on our list is the Monk 36. If you've ever spent time around experienced boaters, you've probably noticed something interesting. Many of them eventually stop chasing the newest designs and start appreciating boats that simply feel right. That's exactly where the Monk 36 comes in. This boat was never designed to impress people with speed or luxury. Instead, it was built around a philosophy that seems almost old-fashioned today. Make the boat comfortable, practical, and easy to live with. And surprisingly, that formula still works. One reason owners become attached to the Monk 36 is its character. Unlike many modern production boats that can feel similar to one another, the Monk has a personality of its own. The classic lines, traditional layout, and solid construction create a boating experience that feels different from many newer designs. But character alone doesn't keep owners from selling. The real reason is that the boat ages well. Many boats look great when they're new. A much smaller number still feel enjoyable 10 or 15 years later. The Monk belongs to that second group. Its layout remains practical. Its systems are generally straightforward, and because it was never built around trends, it doesn't feel outdated as quickly as some newer boats. That's a surprisingly powerful advantage. Owners often discover that while other boats come and go, the Monk continues doing exactly what it was designed to do. And that's enough. Our next boat follows a similar idea, but approaches it from a different angle, the Marine Trader 34. Now, this boat doesn't always receive the same attention as some of the more famous trawlers. In fact, many buyers overlook it completely when they first start searching for a cruising boat, but owners tend to see something different. The Marine Trader 34 offers something that's becoming increasingly difficult to find: simplicity. There are faster boats. There are more luxurious boats. There are certainly more expensive boats, but simplicity has a value of its own. A simpler boat often means fewer surprises, fewer systems to repair, fewer expensive upgrades, less time spent worrying about what might fail next. And over the course of ownership, that becomes incredibly important. Many owners discover that they spend more time enjoying the boat and less time managing it. That may not sound exciting in a brochure, but in real life, it's exactly what many people want. Because after enough years on the water, most owners aren't looking for more complexity. They're looking for less. And that's one of the reasons boats like the Marine Trader develop such loyal followings. They're not trying to be everything, they're simply trying to be good boats. And sometimes that's more than enough to keep an owner from ever wanting to sell. The next boat on our list is one that often flies under the radar, the Californian 38L RC. When people talk about long-range cruising boats, names like Nordhaven and Cady Krogan usually dominate the conversation. But the Californian 38L RC quietly built a reputation of its own among owners who value comfort and practicality over status. What makes this boat interesting is balance. It's large enough to feel comfortable for extended periods on board, yet it avoids some of the complexity and expense that often come with much larger cruising yachts. Owners frequently mention the same thing when discussing these boats. They simply work. The layout makes sense. The living spaces feel usable. The boat is capable without being intimidating. And perhaps most importantly, it remains enjoyable long after the excitement of buying a new boat has faded. That's a quality many boats never achieve. Because eventually, every owner reaches the same point. The novelty disappears. What's left is daily life. And boats that fit naturally into daily life tend to stay in the family much longer than boats purchased mainly for excitement. The Albin 36 follows a very similar pattern. Unlike some boats that rely on impressive specifications to attract buyers, the Albin earns loyalty through practicality. It's not trying to be the fastest. It's not trying to be the largest. Instead, it focuses on something much more important: usability. Owners appreciate how manageable the boat feels, large enough for comfortable cruising, but not so large that every trip becomes a project, capable enough for serious travel, but simple enough to remain enjoyable. That balance is surprisingly rare. Many boats lean too far in one direction. They're either extremely capable but expensive to own, or affordable but limited in what they can do. The Alban sits comfortably in the middle, and over time, that's exactly what many owners begin to appreciate most, because the longer someone owns a boat, the less they care about impressing other people. They care about how the boat fits into their life. And that brings up an interesting question. Have you ever sold something and immediately regretted it later? Maybe it was a boat, maybe it was a car, maybe it was something else entirely. Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy practical boats that owners actually keep for years instead of constantly replacing, subscribe to the channel, because the final boat on this list might be the strongest example yet of why some owners never want to sell. The final boat on our list is the Cady Krogan 42. And if there's one boat that perfectly fits the idea of the boat I should never have sold, it might be this one. Unlike many boats that impress buyers during a walkthrough, the Cady Krogan tends to impress owners after years of use. The longer people own them, the more they seem to appreciate what the boat was designed to do. At first glance, it doesn't look particularly extreme. It's not a high-speed yacht. It's not packed with flashy features, and it doesn't try to compete with luxury boats that cost several times as much. Instead, it focuses on a handful of things and does them exceptionally well: comfort, efficiency, reliability, and perhaps most importantly, confidence. Owners often talk about how these boats make them feel, not because of speed or luxury, but because of the sense that the boat is capable of handling whatever lies ahead. That's a difficult quality to measure. You won't find it on a specification sheet, but experienced owners understand its value immediately, because when you're spending long periods on the water, confidence changes everything. You worry less. You enjoy the journey more, and the boat becomes something you trust rather than simply own. That trust is what keeps many of these boats in the same hands for years, sometimes decades. And after looking at all the boats on today's list, a clear pattern begins to emerge. The boats people keep the longest are rarely the newest. They aren't usually the fastest, and they certainly aren't always the most expensive. In fact, many of them have obvious flaws. Some are slower than modern boats. Some lack the latest technology. Some require compromises that newer models don't. Yet owners continue to hold on to them. Why? Because over time, boating becomes less about features and more about experience. The boats people remember most aren't necessarily the boats that impressed them on day one. They're the boats that made life easier year after year. The boats that started every time. The boats that felt comfortable no matter how long the trip. The boats that quietly did their job without demanding constant attention. And maybe that's the real reason some boats never get sold. Not because they're perfect, but because their owners eventually realize they don't need anything else. So now I'm curious, which boat from today's list would you have the hardest time selling? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy practical boats, long-range cruisers, and real-world boating stories, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.